it has a massive effect. Like and I know it has for me, and I think it is a general thing for like the majority of people. Do you know what I mean? It's the fear that stops you. That the fear of it. I've found over the years that usually the fear is far worse than the actual whatever it is that you're going to have to deal with or do or whatever. I mean, other
Yes,
than like
definitely.
literally, I don't know, bungee jumping off a plane or something like that, where you're talking extreme because like you're like extreme sports, but um,
It's a choice, isn't it?
yeah. Whereas like with me, the fear and the anxiety and the panic, which then all sort of rolled into one,
Yeah.
it became this big deal that just stopped me from doing normal life, as it were. And
And it narrows down as well. I think once fear sort of creeps in, it kind of infiltrates every area. So if you were afraid of one thing, and I used to find that with people who had phobias, it would then start to generalize and they try and
yeah,
avoid it. And the more you try and avoid something, the more it feeds into the fear.
yeah,
The more it seems to strengthen that fear. So, yeah, big area.
yeah, definitely. I know at the end of the first mental health one we did, which was on your channel 2 weeks ago, um, we just at the end I talked a little bit about how extreme mine got. Um,
Mm.
and I was going to talk more about it, just in the sense that I can talk about it now. When I was going through it, I couldn't talk about it because it was, I don't know, all those fears, I guess, of,
Yeah.
oh, they'll think I'm going to use this term, but they'll think I'm a loon. You know what I mean? They'll look
Yeah.
us away and I'll never see the light of day again. And all those things that went through my head at the time. Um, and also the fact that some of it didn't feel real, which
Yeah.
was
Because it can
very
get very
weird.
dissociated from experience. So
Yeah,
you find it very hard to tell.
your level of logic and reality just seemed to go out the window when it was at the extreme. Um, my brother always thought that I had a literal mental breakdown, as it were. Um, when I when I obviously I'd struggled with my mental health for a long time in my physical appearance, in what people. I didn't focus on what like I was. If I hadn't seen a friend for a year, and then I bumped into them, right, for instance, my whole thought would be, oh my God, in my head, they'd be talking to us about, the weather, how you doing, what, the usual kind of where have you been, and blah, blah. In my head, I'd be going, oh my God, they must be thinking how disgusting I look and how gross I am and how horrible I am. And that's how it would be playing through my head.
Mm.
So I never enjoyed those things. And then if I heard someone laugh, it would be like, they're really just laughing at like me, you know what I mean? And that
Yeah.
would just play through me like as a constant type of thing.
It's how you frame things. It's the frame you put around something that
Yeah,
actually changes. And then you end up with having habitual patterns of thought. And it is, I
yeah,
mean, there is a whole thing which talks about reframing something so that it isn't in the same frame you've always had it in, so that you change the internal feelings about something. That's like neuro-linguistic programming, what have you. But so many people fall into that trap of kind of giving themselves more negative self-talk before, logically it
mhm,
doesn't stand up, but logic has nothing to do with this. It feels
no,
horrible and it
how
feels
how it
absolutely
feels,
real.
yeah, and very real is how it feels as well.
Mm,
It was
mm.
very real. I truly believed it all. I really didn't, think that I could think differently than I do now. Like how I think now is like I'm still me, but I'm like more positive me about me. Whereas before, I was positive for everybody else, and everybody else, and it was good for everybody else in that way. But for me, not at all. Not that I ever discussed it because I didn't want to bring up the shame of it for me. You know what I mean? Because that was like pointing out my how I felt and how I was, and I didn't want to bring that up. Do you know what I mean? So
Absolutely.
I lived. I got to the point where I lived in the house and in the computer, in a sense, because I could be the real me in a way because I wasn't having to show me. So therefore, I kind of like lived in that world.
Yeah, because it
And
let more
so,
of you out. You weren't limiting yourself
yeah,
because you're thinking
yeah,
people are
because
going to
people
think
weren't
this.
looking at me. So if they
Mm.
weren't looking at me, that meant that those commentaries that was going through my head when I was face to face with someone wouldn't be happening because they couldn't see us. Do you know what I mean? So I could be myself, but like, and I was so deprecating? Is that the word?
Yeah, because
Yeah.
it's kind of like get it in before somebody else does. And
Yeah,
it
that
actually
that
is
was
quite
exactly it.
disempowering.
Yeah, make a
But a
joke
lot of
about
people
it.
do it. A
Yeah,
lot of people do it. We all tend to play down, but it in the long run, it doesn't serve so well because however clever, funny, witty, etc., as I'm sure you were and many other people are, it's still you knocking you. It's like you wouldn't say that to somebody else. Why would you say it to yourself?
yeah,
Logically, again, it doesn't stand up. But when you're in that place, it absolutely feels like your only coping mechanism, your only way of getting through it and being able to talk to anyone at all.
yeah.
Mm.
So that's what I did, and obviously I knew I wasn't having a life, and food was my only silence. It was in all of that, like the only way I dealt with all of how I felt and everything, the sadness that I felt, credible sadness that I felt, the loneliness, and all of that. I used food as my comfort.
It is a
it
comfort.
was my, it was my
Yeah.
silence because while I was eating, there was no noise in my head. There was that wasn't there. So that was my calm essentially, and that's for me what I look for. And it was it was an escape. In
Yeah,
a way.
and what it did is somehow in your process of having to cope and deal with what you were feeling by eating something, and food is often related to comfort and love anyway because that's the nature of the stuff. But then it becomes a case of okay, yeah, you actually end up in a trance state while you are eating, and you've got focused awareness, and you're not doing that self-doubt thing.
Yeah.
Other people, there are other ways of getting to that place, but it becomes a habit, and it's a very, very hard one to break.
Yeah.
Very hard.
Hi Linda, hi Fauna. Linda saying, I'm the same. I see my depression as weak. It's not though. Depression is an illness. It's not a weakness.
It's a sign that you need to change something, that there is some way you need to take care of yourself. There is no weakness in having a condition, whatever it is, whether it's physical, mental, or otherwise. But it's viewing yourself, it's putting that frame around it that says it's a weakness.
It's not your fault. That's it. I think that's one of the things for me was it's not me. It's not me that's causing that. It's not me who I am that's causing that. And
you have depression. You are not depressed. There's a difference between identifying with the condition and saying, okay, I have something rather than I am something. There's a whole different shift. So if you say, okay, I have depression at the moment, I feel that I'm going through that, is not the same as saying I am depressed and that's defining who you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always felt like I didn't realize that it was depression that I had. I thought I was just me. I thought it was just who I was, and that you know what I mean. And that's how it took so long for me. Do you know what I mean? To see the other side because I didn't think I could feel this way.
Yeah.
But if I had planned to go on a diet in the past and I overate to comfort myself again, to do that, then the retaliation on myself afterwards was horrendous. Like I would call myself the worst things ever. No one can ever compare to the stuff that I would put through my head and say, the amount of failure, the amount of, sort of just grossly just grossly horrible names that I called myself and things like that because
that I'm hating yourself, aren't you? And that
yeah. It was horrendous. I was horrible, absolutely horrible to myself.
And you were
And I
probably
wouldn't
far
even.
worse to yourself than someone else would ever have been.
Oh,
And that's
exactly.
the
And I,
thing. The
and the,
evil
and the,
inner critic is so
but
strong.
then if someone did say something, that
Ooh,
would then just confirm.
layered.
Yeah, that would just then confirm, like, you know. But I'd be horrified that that person had seen us, which is, I suppose, is why I started to then not leave the house. And when you were saying that it starts off as a little thing, but then it becomes like a bigger thing. So I'd be like, there was an incident of fat shaming in the city centre that happened to me. So I stopped going into the city centre, but I'd go to other places. Then eventually, build up, I would get, well, what if I go there and it happens? And then I would stop going there because, you know, I'd talk myself into these things, you know, like that. Well, that could possibly happen there. So, I'll not go there. Or alone. Well, in fact, at first it was, I'll only go there in a taxi, go straight in that one shop and come back in a taxi, and then that means it's less people to see, isn't it? Because I don't have to get public transport, I don't have to walk along.
Trying to avoid makes it worse. It escalates.
It totally makes it worse. But at the time, I'm thinking I'm protecting myself. This is what I'm doing. I'm protecting myself.
And
but I'm not protecting myself.
Is trying to look after you in the very best way.
But I'm not.
But it's not the right part. It's the part of you that's feeling incredibly low and is judging yourself far too harshly. Now you can see it changes a bit. We're like, I don't give a monkey's what someone else thinks. I'm going out. I'm going to enjoy myself and stuff the lot of them. That's the attitude to have. But it's hard to get there. It's taken you a long time, hasn't it?
Oh, it has, definitely. And I mean, I literally got to the bottom before I got there.
Yeah.
Sylvia's saying, I hid mine for a long time as I didn't think others could cope with it.
Yeah, taking care of everyone else.
That's the other thing. That's the other thing. You like. I think someone I know used the term that with everything I've got, I can't be ill. I can't be even mentally ill because I've got to do this and this and this and this and whatever. You know what I mean? And that's what they said. Like, but if I know that when she opened up to her family and explained to them, they were like, much more. They just thought that she was coping with everything. They just thought because she put out that persona, you know what I mean? But when she explained,
that's a habit too. It's a habit to see it as being a weakness to have a problem, and to strengthen all the more. And I guess most of us do it to some degree.
But I've also seen the other side of it is that that another person I know would be. They would do everything, you know, and they would be like, oh, well, I haven't got any time to do anything because I've got all this to do. But they wouldn't let anybody do anything because whenever they did, they couldn't relax enough or allow them to do it because it wasn't done exactly how they wanted and just the right way they needed it to be. So it was a catch-22 for them, you know what I mean? Like in that sense.
That's it. If you need control that badly, that says something about your ability to trust others. There's a trust issue there, clearly. I mean, it gets very complicated. In fact, Stephen, Still 69 UK, is saying self-medicating food is far more prevalent than most people realise. And it is incredibly common. You may not always necessarily see it physically manifest, but it is incredibly common for people to develop stuff around food, one extreme to the other and everything in between. It's incredibly common.
And the thing is that society still very much think, a lot of society still very much think that isn't a case. It's a case of greed. It's a case of laziness. It's a case of, you know what I mean? It's a case of those things that they just need to eat less and move more, because that's this thing that you always get. Yeah, it drives me insane.
The one, isn't it? And there may be a grain of truth in it, but it's of no help.
Yeah, obviously that works. But if it was that simple, if it wasn't connected to mental health, if it wasn't connected to how you feel mentally, that would be no problem. You know what I mean? But that's not how it works. It's not how it is.
No, people are far more complicated than that. And like you say, the whole thing is, you know, it's difficult to take complete responsibility for something when you absolutely don't have, you're doing what you can. Part of you is just trying to look after you to keep your head above water. And yet in the long term, it isn't as helpful as it could be. Nobody should ever be judged by that. People should always be helped, you know, and different kinds of help work for different people. And Clapham, 1994 Clapham, I can never say his name.
Jordan.
Jordan. He's saying he's got social anxiety, and many people do suffer on some level with that. Had CBT. It doesn't work for everybody. I know CBT practitioners, and that it can be wonderful, but like NLP and hypnotherapy, it's never a one size fits all. It's finding the thing that is going to work for you and the therapist that works for you.
Yeah,
because that's just as important as the actual therapy. You might be right, Jordan. I think having a tendency to autism in some direction is probably going to make it harder for that to work. But there are always answers and ways of changing things. It's just finding the right. You've got to find the right key for the lock.
Find the right thing for you, which sometimes takes a while, But it's also a case of you keep having to push for that help as well. And that can be draining and tiring that you don't do it. I know I've had some saving past. So like if you constantly feel like you're fighting for something, for that support, that help that you need, it becomes quite hard.
And it takes all your energy. You're left with nothing for yourself then. And it happens in a lot. And I know at the moment there's a lot of people struggling who aren't getting the help they need. And I'm hoping that as things return to a level that they should be at, but even before COVID, it was never bloody easy. I mean,
it wasn't easy, no. But then I think we need to keep, saying to doctors we need help with this, so that they see that the need is there, and they keep increasing the need, because that is the only way it will increase. If we then don't see anything, then it just ends up like, well, it's not needed, which it is needed.
Not to be ignored, and to keep saying it. If they haven't heard it the first time, you go back in, you say
it again. Which is hard when you're not feeling 100% in that sense.
Exactly. Or the thing is to have, what can help is to have a friend, have someone who will absolutely back you up to the hilt, who will basically be your wingman and will make sure that you get what you need. I mean, you're allowed to have people go in with you for physical illnesses and stuff like cancer and stuff. You can have someone in with you to help. Why not when it's a mental issue too? Why not?
I think if it got to the point where having some sort of mental issue was as easy as going to the doctor with a cut on your finger, do you know what I mean? That would make all the difference. If it was that simple, then, as Stephen says, the tragic thing, the people that need the help in the worst position to fight for it, that should reduce that level. Because if it was dealt with in the early days, because it was so easy to do, and and it was so easy just to ask for help or speak out about it or whatever, if this message keeps going forward and it gets easier, then people hopefully won't get to that extreme level as much, because they've had some help beforehand. So
people shouldn't
hi John, hi Paula,
any more than they should have to fight for their for physical treatments.
Definitely. To go back to what I was talking about with me, so obviously mine became so extreme that I didn't leave the house. I got to the point where I never crossed my doors for 4 years, like at all. And this was through choice. Obviously my weight increased because of the things I was living in the computer, that was my reality, I suppose. I wasn't living in the real world. I didn't have a life, essentially, is what I'm saying. And obviously the slightest thing brought my fear. I would be horrified. And it got to the point where I'd be horrified, of like, even though the kids were older, getting older, if they weren't on the certain bus that they'd be back, I'd start to panic, because I couldn't do anything. I couldn't go and help them if they needed us. And obviously that became
being out of control.
And that would massively affect me. And eventually I got to the point where, I was even struggling to get out of bed, and then I ended up with ulcers on my legs, and then fluid in my legs. And I was seeing a district nurse who thankfully kept pushing me, and eventually I went into hospital, and I spent 6 months in hospital. I wasn't meant to be there for that long. I was actually treated a lot sooner, but they were going to try and get us into some sort of rehab for mobility, but it fell through. at the end. So I spent an extra 3 months in hospital for no reason, really, waiting for this transfer that ended up falling through. But in that time, a lot changed. I mean, my mental health completely hit the floor because I was away from my food. I was away from the comfort. I only had what they gave me, which obviously was nowhere near what I was having. And I remember in the early days, they were like, "Oh my God, you've lost loads of weight. You've lost this much," and the tellers, like the nurses, like on a sort of weekly basis, saying you've lost like 14 pounds, you've lost 26 pounds, you've lost 30 odd pounds, and I didn't want to know. I was like, don't tell me, like, I don't know why, and I can't explain it exactly, but I didn't want to know. And I had I got a blood infection, which I think is sepsis, literally called sepsis now.
It is.
I became really poorly and nearly died. I think they were trying to put us on intensive care, but because of the size I'd get into, to shift the whole of my bed and equipment and everything would have been an issue. And obviously I wasn't mobile, I couldn't move, and I'd filled with fluid up to my hips, which had gradually gone because they'd put us on like tablets to remove it. I have lipedema and lymphedema, which are both conditions that cause inflammation and fluid. And the lipedema is like where you get your fat deposits in the wrong place, which then causes inflammation in your legs, and it means your legs are always bigger than the rest of you, which I'd had since I was like teenage, and I was conscious of it, which is why I never wore trousers, but didn't know that at the time. Obviously you learn a lot as time goes on. And then after, I remember like a day when the doctor said to me, "Oh, you gave us the right scare last night," and I was like, "Did I?" And I didn't know, couldn't remember it. And I remember over a weekend just sort of speaking to my sister briefly, and I had flashes of things, but I also remember how my mental health started to go. Like my panic had risen, and I was put on medications that I didn't know about when I wasn't obviously very well, because I didn't know. So I was like, "Well, why am I on this tablet?" And they said, "Oh, because of your heart." And I was like, "My heart? What's wrong with my heart?" And obviously it said it was in a panic, and then I couldn't read anything, I couldn't listen to anything. Like I was constantly doing this to my head. I don't know, it was a comfort or something. Like I would be sort of sitting, staring at something, and I'd feel like a whole day had gone by, and it'll have been, and the clock would say 10 minutes, and I'm like, it can't be like 5 minutes after the next day. Like the logic, and I said this last week, logically I was looking in the back of the phone and couldn't work out why I couldn't I couldn't see myself blinking, which you can't see yourself blinking, but at the time, logically, I didn't have that, and I was like, so I must be dead. This was what conclusion I'd come to in this extreme logic, because I didn't have that comfort, I didn't have that silence with the food that I'd always had. I mean, obviously, I'd been on some extreme drugs to battle the infection that I had, which is another thing that my CPN said to us. And then I was looking through the panel window, and I saw someone outside of there, and I thought, "Oh, they're watching that person because they must need help." And then I thought, "No, it's me. They think I'm a loony." Do you know what I mean? And like that sort of thing. And then I remember thinking my brother wasn't real, because my brother doesn't do hospitals, and he came to visit us because I wasn't speaking to any of the family or anything. And I remember watching him walk through the room, like, just, and being like, what, and thinking things like the devil sent him. And, if one of the nurses had said a word to us, and it was like a word that it's something I'd thought of, and it would be a normal word, like please, or there, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm like, I said that word, they've been listening to me. Do you know what I mean? And all these things, and it was so extreme. And the panic, the nighttime panics, I would be clinging to the bed, and the whole anxiety and pressure on my chest. I'd have headaches that were so intense, it felt like my head was going to fall off, and the pressure on my chest was horrendous. And then these hot and cold sort of flushes that used to come up and down my body, and just I remember closing my eyes once and thinking the doctor will go not be there if I close my eyes, and I did, and she was still there, and just having my whole like life flash before my eyes, and then starting to wonder if that really did happen, or if this happened, and I couldn't work out. And this went on for about 2 or 3 weeks. It was horrible, and I would not wish this on anyone ever. I remember like having like absolute like breakdowns of crying if I had the slightest memory of something that, like, my brother said something about one of the kids that did, and I remembered. So I like totally broke down crying, like howling, and I couldn't let it out. It was horrible, but I also know that like from then, and the fact that I stayed, and then something my sister said, because she was like, you need to fight it, like, because my mum and dad didn't actually know that how serious things were, because we both had their own issues. So like we kind of kept it from them. I was just there to lose weight. That's what they thought. You know what I mean? Which, obviously.
Yeah.
So my sister was like, you need to fight it. I'm not telling my mum and dad that you're not here anymore. Like, and I remember her saying this, she's like shouting. She was shouting at us, and I just said, and she just said, use your logic. That was one of the things she said. And I thought to myself, every morning I've woke up and like things has been okay, and like I just ungripped the bed, and from then on started to build back up. But it wasn't easy. It took a long time, and there was loads of other things that happened as well. But it's honestly absolutely madness.
It's amazing what you can do when, like you say, sometimes you have to get to a place in order to for some realization to switch and to go, actually, I don't want to be here, and to be able to do something about it. But it's difficult. I mean, I'm going way back to a comment here. Linda Orme has said she doesn't leave her bed, let alone her flat.
That was
and in
me.
fact, she's a retired mental health nurse, so she know, of course, you know everything. You know what you're supposed to be doing, and
Yeah.
but all the theory, without the right support at the right time, is and it. I would imagine if you'd been in that situation, you know, Linda's probably harder on herself than other people would be, because she's thinking, I know what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah, but that doesn't just because you've been through that as a help doesn't mean to say that you wouldn't stand it on the other side when you're going through it. You would need someone to support you. Do you know what I mean? And I would think, get that support, you know.
And also, as Stephen Stall has said, you know, the days of having a GP, you know, someone who knew you over a number of years, or knew your family and was familiar with you.
Yeah.
I mean, that's certainly gone. Even where we are, that's changed over the last 10 years. I don't even know who my doctor is now, and I wouldn't particularly want to if I could possibly help it. Just because they're passing through. They've got so many people. There's no relationship, and it's scientifically proven that if you have a relationship with the person who's giving you care, in the medical sense, your outcome is always better. So it's not just some kind of airy fairy, you know, attitude. It's scientifically proven that it makes a difference who you liaise with. So if you never see the same person twice, you're missing out on a good percentage of good healing that you could be getting.
And then having to go through all of that again as well.
Yeah. And like I say, Sylvia's had the whole thing before now, where she's been brave, gone in and said, I need some help, and then been basically fobbed off by being told to wait until after a next operation. Well, that's they shouldn't be able to do that to people. I mean, it's just fundamentally wrong. It's fobbing someone off who's been brave enough to say something, which takes guts, to be fair, to go to a almost complete stranger and say, actually, I think I need help mentally, because of the attitudes that we have, you know, that's still prevalent.
Can you not like reach out of your own accord? Because we have self-referral here, so you don't even have to go through your doctor or whatever. But also maybe there's like charities that work within the area that you need support with, that you could reach out to them as well. I know it's really hard to do. I remember building up loads of things to go to my GP to say I need help with my weight and all of that, and he laughed at me, and I cried my eyes out. Yeah, he laughed at me because I couldn't get weird at his practice because I was too big for the scales.
Yeah.
And I wanted him to refer me to the hospital so that I could get weird, which would help with my progress. And he laughed at me, saying that in his over 20 years of being a GP, he'd never been faced with this sort of dilemma, and it just made me feel so shit. Like,
It's horrible. I
I
mean,
cried my eyes out and didn't bother again for years and years. It's and that's awful. And
yeah, that's
it's
horrible.
in the same when you get someone who's really good, like the district nurse that I had, the nurse and sister, like I truly believe that if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be here. Because if I
Yeah.
wouldn't have gone in, if it had been one of the other nurses and they'd just come and dressed my leg, they wouldn't have pushed because they don't normally. It was only because it was her.
Yeah, yeah. There were some very good people out there, thankfully, who pay attention to detail like that. Yeah, still saying that having sepsis, having infection really does change. It completely changes your body chemistry almost.
Yeah, well, and the
Really.
CPN said that with obviously the infection itself, because at the time I couldn't talk about it, and I remember them distinctly saying what's wrong. And one of the other things happened that I couldn't speak. When they asked us what's wrong, I'd go to talk, and it was just like like that. I couldn't get words out. It was like choking on my own words.
Anxiety.
They thought I'd had a stroke at one point. That was what they decided. But yeah.
Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, the medical profession, and I've known plenty of GPs over the years and people in those sort of professions, and sometimes they get very hardened to stuff and they become very tunnel visioned, and but part of that is the nature of the business they're in that seems to do that. They don't start out like that, but they end up like it. But there has to be more compassion in all of the medical care given. There just needs to be empathy and compassion. And if people haven't got it, they shouldn't be in the bloody job, no matter how clever they are.
It's madness, isn't it? Well, you do find that you get some really clever people who have no bedside manner, and
Indeed.
it's really, really hard.
God, I'm catching up on the chat here.
I was just trying to look at the side.
Scrolling through.
Actually.
Hello, Jilly. Jilly bee. Yeah. Jane says, give me his address. I'll get the minibus out and call the girls.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there are charities out there that can help, but it's not always easy to approach people off the bat. But
and especially when you built up the courage to do it in the first place, and you get knocked back because it's such a thing, and when you're feeling like that, it's hard to say, but I need this, you know what I mean, kind of thing. You just kind of go, okay, because that's how you feel yourself, isn't it? Really,
why you need your support with you.
Why you need
kind of your named adult. Your responsible adult to be with you, to say the things that maybe just don't occur because you're not in the right place.
Yeah, they just assumed it was a fear of the cancer returning, but it isn't. Just so maybe not going through doors directly and trying a different charity, trying a charity. Maybe dementia charities have some sort of help and support for the families. I haven't actually dealt. I mean, obviously, my mum's had dementia and stuff like that, but I never looked at that. But they might be able to, because if that's a big part of it, isn't it? Our other ones as well, like Mind, because I know you can get referred to Mind and stuff like that. So definitely,
there are people out there, but it might take a bit of hunting around. I've got no personal experience of people with dementia either. It's not something that we've very much come across, or that I've personally dealt with. I know many people who have, and it's a nightmare. Not more for the people around, I think, than almost the person suffering it, because it can change a personality completely, and it removes all that is good about somebody. It seems to be just dissolved away. It's very frightening. Oh gosh, Stephen Stall says his GPs that his GP are two sisters with absolutely no social skills at all.
Skills, yeah.
And that actually happens a lot. Yeah.
That was my old doctor. I had quite a few run-ins with him. I absolutely hated him, and obviously being in the sense of like I had all my struggles and issues to speak out anyway. I avoided him like the plague. Do you know what I mean? And I didn't really change doctors because it was just another thing. And again, I thought it was me. So, you know, like all of that. And I remember taking David when he had a sore throat and stuff, and he was struggling to swallow, and he was only 3 or something. And he, I said, "Oh, he's got a sore throat." He was like, "Well, you know, what's the problem?" And I was like, "He's got a sore throat." And he gave us this lecture on how do I know he's got a sore throat. Have you studied to be a doctor for 7 years? Oh, he did. He gave us this lecture, and like, yeah,
cheeky bastard.
Yeah, he was he nearly got struck off at one point. He was reported so many times.
He should have
ridiculous. Yeah, I'm not with him now, but now I'm under like a load of doctors. So as you said before, you haven't got that, you know, who did you see last time? And I don't know. And then you've got to explain everything from the last time and the last time and the last time so that they can know. And it's really frustrating.
And yes, I've certainly, you know, don't know many people who, if you have one thing wrong with you, it's very straightforward. If you've got more than one thing, so more than one specialism, there is very little communication between the experts at their level, the consultants and all that. They quite often just don't communicate, and there doesn't seem to be a decent central database of files of information. So as you say, you end up re-explaining yourself at every turn. It's like, oh, people haven't got the energy for that, especially if they're ill. You know, unbelievable.
Definitely.
But if anyone does know of charities that can help, then that's all to the good. I mean, I know of Macmillan Nurses, and I know of a lot of the cancer charities and how hard they work to help people, but that's a little bit different. I don't have personal experience myself of the mental health charities, so I can't really say.
Yeah. But there's quite a lot of like charities locally that when I rang up, I've forgotten who I rang up with, somebody I can't remember because of like mine issues. They gave me 2 or 3 numbers to call. Mine was included, but there was two like more local ones, I guess. And I assume every area will have their own local ones, so could be worth doing a quick Google type of thing.
Yes. Exactly. Hello, Kirsten, by the way.
Hi, Kirsten.
She
says, "Hi, I've been listening in. I've had my struggles with mental health, and I've had a very blessed life. I don't think I could have coped if I'd been more challenged." You know, the thing is, you come through the other side, and I sometimes sit here and think, "Have I getting through what I've getting through?" But you just do. You just cope with it. I kind of think you have to.
You do,
even though you have your issues and you have your off days and you have your ups and downs within that, but essentially you just do, don't you? It's kind of weird, unless obviously it's an extreme where you do need, you know, much more support, like kind of thing. But yeah.
I like Paula J's comment here. It does take a sort of person to be interested and able to pass the exams and become a doctor.
Yeah.
Not a usual personality type combined with good social skills. Very true. It's just one of those fields where to be able to ace those kinds of exams is quite rare, that the communication and empathy skills actually go along with it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously when he had that, and I was like, well, he's struggling to swallow, and his mouth, if you look in the back of his throat, it's red.
Yeah, that's a sore throat.
You know what I mean? I mean, I'm not saying it's I wasn't saying whether it was like tonsillitis or, you know, something else, you know what I mean, or whatever. I was just saying that he was struggling with sore throat. Stephen said, a friend of mine caring for his mother with dementia found a local support group and found it so beneficial. He now volunteers for them. Oh, that's really good. Yeah, that's really good. To be able to do that. So you never know.
Because there quite often are groups that will provide a little bit of respite, so the main carer can actually get out and have a bit of headspace and do a bit of shopping, or just something that where they can step back from it for a bit, you know.
Yeah,
It's very important for the sanity of the carer, because I mean, God knows how they do it. I don't think I could.
Yeah, me
Not
neither.
patient enough.
But it's like, you know, obviously when you have a parent that way, you just go through it, don't you? Again, like,
Yeah, well, you've
you
been
have
there
to.
with yours, yeah, and I mean, again, you know, dementia will manifest quite differently for different people. Some
Yeah,
people's
because some
personalities
people,
become they're fine, they're lovely, they're, you know, yes, they're losing their memories, but generally they up to a certain point they're staying themselves. Other people, it seems to completely flip their personality, and people who've
yeah,
been, you know, previously very peaceable have become somewhat violent and very unpredictable and
yeah,
really not themselves. It's like their personality is gone. So yeah,
yeah. Like my mum was pretty much quite funny, for a lot of it. She had a lot of humor, but she could be wicked. Like wicked is in like she would be like she lost her tact. So
no edit
like
button.
my daughter showed my mum a picture of her girlfriend like walking in a field with loads of flowers, and my mum went, "Oh, she's got a fat back." You know what I mean? Like she just lost
Yeah,
that tact, like
no
kind of
edit
thing.
button.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, like I
But
edit
then a lot of
button.
old people are like that anyway. I can name
Yeah, I
several I
suppose.
know of
Yeah,
who
she might.
use edit
But
function.
my mum would have been like,
Gone.
to know my mum before, she would have been horrified at that. You know, like that sort of response.
But normally
So
it stays in your head. You don't say it out loud. This is
yeah,
the thing.
yeah,
They
exactly.
suddenly forget that they haven't said it out. It's like, did I say that
Yeah,
out loud?
yeah. And so there would be things like that, and should take the mick out of things, but then she also would be sometimes a bit cruel and mouthy, shall we say? Mainly at my dad. My dad took the brunt of that, I suppose. Like he was complaining about his glasses, and she said she decided to make a song of some sort that was like "Poor little blind man, poor little blind man," something along those lines. It wasn't very nice at all, obviously, but we obviously aware that my mum wasn't being my mum, and
It was just her way of making sense of something, I suppose. You know,
yeah,
like so the logic function as
yeah.
goes a bit.
But she also made me laugh quite a lot as well. Like in the in she called us a pervert.
Really?
Yeah, because
Okay.
I was telling her that my son sometimes has headphones on playing on Xbox, and he's had conversations that I said maybe his mother doesn't want to know, you know, doesn't want to hear, kind of thing. She went, "Are you one of them listening perverts?" I was like, "What?" I
Yeah,
was like, "No."
slightly random.
Yeah, and then she said something about when I won that book voucher for me poem. I'd won a book voucher, and she went, um, "If you get when you buy the dirty books, let me read them first." And I was like, "What do you mean buying dirty books?" You know, just things like that. Like you would just laugh at. You have to, kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Best way to deal with something like that really is you kind of join with their reality a bit, because if it ends up being in opposition, that will raise anxiety for them and create a whole set of
Yeah.
scenario that you don't want.
Lauren says, "Evening, everyone. I looked after my mother with dementia for 4 years. She died. Awful to say, but it was a relief."
Yeah.
I don't think it's awful to say that. I don't. I think, and because I didn't, you know, I spoke to my mum a lot, but I couldn't physically help her, so it was left to my brother and sister. And I think in some ways it was a relief for them, because it was such a, it's it's not an easy task, and it's not, and it's like you lose them twice. So you lose them with the dementia, which is probably the harder part in some ways, and then you lose them when they actually die, which is
Yeah, double whammy.
yeah, like a two-step thing, but it's not as, because you've lost them already in a way, because like the dementia sort of kills them in a way. Um, she said then she had three major operations for cervical cancer, and then her husband died. But yeah, Lauren, you've had it tough, haven't you? She said, "My friends say I'm depressed. I don't think I am, but I am sad. So, so sad."
Yeah, and feeling sad.
Definitely. is a sadness.
It's a normal emotion, but when it colours everything else, when it
When
is
that all you
generalised
feel,
expressed.
yeah. If that's all you feel is the sadness and sort of no hope or anything like that.
Yeah, difficult.
John says, this is a comforting live stream. I'm going through a tough time and we all have our struggles and sadnesses. It's good not to be alone with it. That's very true, John. And I'm pleased it's given you some comfort to know that you're not alone, because we're all here for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it is the isolation of it, and thinking that you are the only person in the world it's happening to is horrible. You know, it's a small comfort to know that maybe other people are further along that journey than you are, or in the same position. And I think that's one thing where the internet can be useful, because you meet other people who are in a similar situation, or who've coped with it.
Massively helps to have other people who feel the same as you. And also, if you are going through and you've got issues, whether they be physical, mental, or anything, just to have this kind of support, you know, it is always a good thing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, people going through tough times.
Definitely. I don't know if you've managed to have any professional support, Lauren, but maybe it would be good for you to speak to your GP or anyone who could put you in touch with people who have gone through similar things and stuff like that, because I think it can really help to have someone understand, you know, massively help, I think.
You
And
need
also
the support network, and you need to know if there's any professional help that can be something to hang on to, especially when you've got multiple things going on. You know, having one thing is bad enough, but when it's sort of the world seems to be kind of falling in around your ears, you really need, good backup and good support.
Chris says, do you know of any other YouTube channels that talk like this?
There must be. Other people.
I would assume there must be, but I don't know of any, which is probably why I wanted to talk about it in the first place. And obviously, the with death was, we jumped straight in the deep end, didn't we?
We did.
With death, but that was very relevant to both of us at the time, and well, to everyone at one point or another in their life, isn't it? And I think I just wanted to be able to speak about things and just normalize them a bit more, because it is, normal for all of us. And like just speaking out, even in the side chat, if something that you've gone through, someone else could be reading that, not commenting, but read that and think, oh, that happens to me, and could be the next day go and speak to someone about it after not saying anything for years and years. And that's a massive thing.
Yeah, and to know that you have the right to get the help you need.
Yeah, totally.
If someone had a broken leg, they have the right to go to hospital and get it fixed. If something is not right for you in another direction, you also have the right to get help with it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Sorry, just scanning some chat there, and Paula Jo's coming and said, no, you're not coming across as a know-it-all.
Not at all.
15 years into coping with your mum with dementia, you deserve a bloody medal, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, definitely. And 25 years of my complex autistic daughter with self-harming and tendencies, and that is, that's real life skills that you've learnt in that time, and would be massive support to other people who were especially in the beginnings of it, because as you will know, Paula, on both cases, that at the start, when you don't know how or what's going to be going on, you feel, it makes you feel better to have someone who can say, oh, like I went through that, and give you a little bit of something that could work for your child as well, or for the person you're caring for with dementia. Or even it could be just something that can give you a break in that time, whether it be a support group that can help, or anything really. And it just just makes
But people need hope, don't they? You need to know that there's
Yeah.
some sort of light at the end of the tunnel, and that it's not always going to be as horrific as it might feel right now. And there are so many ways around that. And knowing that other people have gone before and have dealt with it and are coping and can offer words of comfort or advice or just listen is supremely important.
Yeah.
Mm.
Hi, Susan. I've been listening while making and eating my dinner. Good conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chris says, this may sound daft, but I have bad tinnitus, and someone told me it was connected to depression. Oh, I've never, I mean, it's obviously because there's a lot of things can be connected, isn't there? But have you ever spoke to your GP about it, Chris, or like looked into something professional?
Some tinnitus can be helped with. There are some therapies that it won't make it go away, but it can help you to live with it and to minimise its impact.
The ringing, right? Ringing?
Yeah, it's noise. It's not always a ring, but it's an invasive sound.
Yeah,
that you hear, and it's inside your head. Now, whether it's connected to depression, I think is probably very much up for debate. But I think if you feel low, you're going to notice it much more, and it's about noticing with something like that. I know personally, because I used to do hypnotherapy, that can be a help. It's not necessarily the case for everyone, but there are things out there and treatments and things that can help to mitigate it a bit. I don't think there's cures specifically, but I always think you should shout things from the rooftops and tell them what you've got and go, I want some help with this. You shouldn't have to put up with something just because you're male, you're female, you're young, you're old, or whatever. There should be no benchmark for this sort of thing.
Definitely. Stephen says, if a stream like this is of help, then imagine the benefits of finding a specific support group. Yeah, someone who has, is going through exactly what you're going through. Whether that be an illness the same as yours, or supporting a family member that's the same, whatever it is, it really helps to have someone understand that. And Kirsten says, I love that you talk so matter of fact about depression. I always feel shame for feeling so low. You should never feel shame about it, Kirsten. I think there's a kind of thing in the world sometimes, is that you look around yourself and you think, well, I've got this and I've got this and I've got this in my life, but it doesn't matter what you've got or who's in your life. You could have everything, and you can still feel depressed, you can still feel sad, you can still feel low, you can still have anxiety or any of those things, because it's an illness that is not controlled by what you've got or anything like that. If that were the case, I'd be one of the luckiest people ever in my sense, because both my parents, I was 45, I've got great kids, great family, amazing friends, some fantastic people on YouTube, a lovely dog, you know what I mean? There's loads and loads of things that are positive, and if that's based, if it was just that made the difference to how you felt, but because depression is an illness and those other things are illnesses, they're not controlled by anything else than the illness itself.
And shame really is just kind of anger turned inwards at yourself. And Lauren's mentioned about feeling angry at the world, which is projecting outwards. Different personalities will do anger and frustration in different ways. But yeah, I mean, whether it's turned inwards or outwards, it still somehow can eat away at your own sense of self. I think learning to accept it and go, it's all right to feel low, it's all right to feel angry, it's all right to feel anything. There are no bad emotions. They are just emotions, and they will pass if you let them. The difficulty is going, it's all right, I feel like this now, but I probably won't in 5 minutes. It's really hard to do.
Definitely. John says, I have a few things I listen to on YouTube, guided meditations for lots of mental health problems. Yeah, I've listened to quite a few of them myself. Not so much in recent times. I feel much better within things, but definitely in the past, I had quite a few different ones that would work. there's a free app on your phone that you can download as well. Which I think it's called Mindful.
I think it
Mindfulness.
is. There are a few like that, and they can be very helpful.
And
you know, what one person finds relaxing and enjoyable, someone else will find highly irritating. That is true.
Well, it was always just about getting the right voice for me, because if the voice sounded too robotic, I couldn't work with that. But if I found the right voice, the right soothing voice who had the right words, you know, and it would help. Yeah, breathing exercises, massive help for me as well. So
yes, yeah,
maybe that's what we could do next week, if we talk about like anxiety, panic attack, things to help with those things. Do you know what I mean? Like sort of ways to help, I guess.
I mean, there are many tools, and it's kind of like having a toolbox. You have to have lots of things in it, and hope that one or two of them might help at the time. But yes, because they're quite complex things that can work. Sorry, I'm drawn by the chat again about the ADHD autism idea, that actually that can often be mistaken.
Obviously Kelly's saying husband has just been diagnosed with ADHD and he's looking forward to getting medication, as he now wonders if he didn't really need antidepressants after all, but has had to wait for meds as needs monitoring. My son's got ADHD. He chose to stop his own medication for that. I think he was in his early 20s when he stopped it, and his own choice, which is fine. But by the time he got to that age, after going through adolescence, he did find a lot of ways of coping better. He still has issues with lots of things, as we all do in life, you know what I mean? He really struggles with change. Change is massive. If I tell him someone's coming to the house tomorrow because something needs doing, he could have a meltdown about something like that. But if I tell him with plenty of warning, you know what I mean, then he's okay with it, because he has time to digest it and whatever. And obviously ADHD is on the autism scale, so it's
and learning to be adaptable and handle changes is probably one of the most important life skills there is. So it's very difficult, especially if you're in adolescence, as a lot of people are, when everything's changing anyway and it's all very confusing. It's a difficult thing to deal with.
And like for me, who's been stuck in for the past 6 weeks, I'm getting to go out tomorrow. Woohoo! That is going to have a massive deal on my mental health, because I won't buy any more jewelry, because I've been buying jewelry.
Have you got a lot of jewelry?
Just a bit.
Ooh,
don't ask for it.
I love jewelry.
Don't ask for it, because she might have seen it.
Oh, good heavens! Yes, but this is the thing: it's a distraction. People will find something to
you find something else to distract yourself with, and
buy something at home. You can choose online, so you've got some autonomy and some power. And I think it's about that. It's about being able to choose when you're have been in a situation where you've had very little choice. So you can see why it makes sense that you would do that, of course, and you won't need to. In quite the same way when you're back out, photographing all the baby ducklings and all those gorgeousness.
Like prior to going out, I would probably buy one every few months, maybe, just to have a bit kind of rake kind of thing. But I've bought 9 in the past few weeks.
Well, I hope they're all lovely things that you'll enjoy wearing out.
Yeah. The worst thing is I don't wear most of it, because most of it I just like to keep it, especially things that make nice noises and stuff.
So it brings you pleasure and it makes you smile. So
it does.
It's not always a bad thing.
It just, when it gets a bit excessive, which it did a little bit this time, because of
so
anyway.
Maybe I need to rein it in a bit.
Anyway, as much as we could talk about this all night, I'm going to have to wrap it up, because I am live again at 9 o'clock for Banishment with the lovely Jordan, who might be still in the chat. He was 1994 Clapham. But we will come back with it, I think.
This one's going to roll.
We'll bring mental health back, and we'll talk about the things that people do to help. things that help them, and all different things. And
yeah, and chance for people to vent whatever's going on as well. I think to have a longer term project like this is good, because everyone gets the chance to you know, digest what's gone on, and then the following week we just kind of plop in there and revisit.
Yes. Oh, Jordan is there. Hello. Hi,
You'll
Peter.
be fine. You'll be fine, Jordan. It's a lot of fun.
But thank you to everyone for joining us. Thank you to the lovely Heather as well over there. I will be back at 9, as I said, for Banished Bin, which is on this channel, which is just a bit of light relief, just a bit of fun after the seriousness, isn't it?
Yeah.
And but we will be back next week for this exact show on Heather's channel, which is linked in the bottom. So if you're not linked to Heather, you know, please go over. And thank you very much to everyone, and we will see you then. Bye bye now.
Bye bye now.